Senator John Cornyn, thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thanks, Jack.
Good to see you. So you and your campaign are announcing that 30 Republican elected leaders, current and former, are endorsing you for your re-election. Why is this significant in your opinion, and what does it say about your campaign?
Well, it says, I've been doing this a while, and I take a certain amount of pride in helping build the Republican Party in our state, which is now a red state, solidly red state. And I think a lot of folks who maybe not from here, maybe they moved from somewhere else, don't really understand how we transformed Texas from essentially a Democratic stronghold to a Republican stronghold. And I think these elected officials, former and present, who are endorsing me is sort of a sign of a good housekeeping seal. Now, is it enough for people to say, well, I should vote for this guy? Maybe not, but I think it should hopefully provide some validation for the service I've performed and hopefully a vote of confidence for the election.
And every candidate has their share of endorsements.
Of course.
So is this a wash for voters, for primary voters?
I think it's just one signal, one data point among many others. I think obviously people are going to have a lot of other questions. Our politics has changed quite a bit since I've been involved in the Senate, and this is now a party that is dominated by President Trump. And so we talk, of course, a lot about my support for the president and his policies. You may have seen a few commercials here and there, and things that sort of clear up some misconceptions or misrepresentations about my record, for example, on border security and the like. So this is just part of another step in the building a campaign, which of course will culminate with a March 3rd election.
Why should primary voters stick with you?
Well, hopefully because they believe I've done a good job and I've done things that they agree with. For example, as I just mentioned, the Republican Party in Texas is President Trump dominates that party. And I've worked closely with him now for his first term and now in his second term, have a 99% plus voting record with the president's policies. And if they like his policies, then I would think they would think I have been doing the right thing and supporting them. So, and I think also there's some benefit that comes from experience and knowing how to get things done. For example, when Governor Abbott wanted to get Texas reimbursed $11 billion for border security that should have been picked up by the federal government during the Biden administration, he called me. And I think he knew and had some confidence that I knew how to work with the Texas delegation to get that done, and we did. So I think if those are the things people care about, then I would certainly welcome their support. But maybe if all I've done is to maybe make them more curious, then they will continue to follow the campaign and make a decision, obviously on their own, but hopefully I'll persuade them that I should be returned to office on March the 3rd.
You've spoken with President Trump various times, obviously, but you've asked him for his endorsement. What's your pitch to him?
Well, I think, a couple of things. One is we've got 5 new congressional districts. And who's at the top of the ballot matters. If you have a strong candidate who's able to help lift voter turnout, I think we have a better chance of electing Republicans in each of those 5 new congressional districts. If we have somebody at the top of the ticket who's not lifting all boats because they're just basically going to skim by or lose in the general election, then that will have an effect down ballot. And the other is just the opportunity costs of spending a lot of money in a general election here in Texas when we have Senate races in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Michigan, and New Hampshire, where those resources could be used to increase the number of Republicans in the Senate. So those are a couple of the arguments I've made to the president. And as I've said before, I have a good working relationship with him. He'll make a decision on his own timetable, but he understands it clearly and he's following the race closely.
If you don't get his endorsement, is that going to be a big problem for you?
Well, if he doesn't endorse in the race, then that obviously that won't be a factor. But it would certainly help if he did. But if he decides not to and just stays out of the race, we're not slowing down, and I'm still optimistic that we'll win.
And let's talk about the polls, because the last independent poll that I've seen, University of Houston, Texas Southern poll, up until October 1st, showed Attorney General Ken Paxton at 34%, you at 33%, Congressman Wesley Hunt at 22%. This was before he got into the race. One of the newer polls that the Hunt campaign put out shows you at 26%, Paxton at 25%, Hunt at 24%, and those who were unsure at 26%. So why should you, being a four-term incumbent, be this low in the polls? Why is this so tight?
Well, it's early, and I don't.
Not that early.
I don't think most Texans, maybe other political junkies like you and me, we think about these things now a lot, but not most folks who are concerned about their kids going to school or their job or the government shutdown or other things. So I think as people begin to focus on it as we get closer to March 3rd, I think that'll certainly, the numbers will tighten up considerably. But I've run in a lot of campaigns, and I know Texas is such a big state, and it's hard to communicate and engage people all around a state as big as Texas, and it's very expensive. So I think we're on track. We have a roadmap to success, and we are hitting all of our landmarks along the way. And so the fact that we've been able to close the gap so dramatically, where the Attorney General's numbers have not gone up, but my numbers have gone up dramatically, I think the trend line is in our favor. So I'm very optimistic.
Does Wesley Hunt's entrance into this race, does the congressman's entrance into this race hurt you?
I don't know. I don't think he can win. I think his own polls show that he wouldn't make a runoff. And so what could happen is it would force a runoff in May, and we're prepared for the duration. Obviously, I'd prefer to have the race decided in March 3rd, but and like I said, I think we're on the path, on a trajectory that will result in my winning the race. And but I think the Congressman Hunt needs to come to grips with the fact that Texas is a big place. Most people don't know who he is, and he can't win a primary 4 months from now. So he can decide whether to stay in the race or maybe run for his old House seat or whatever, but he can't win.
How concerned are you about a runoff?
You know, I've run in a lot of races, Jack. I kind of enjoy the campaigns. Obviously, I'd like to avoid the expense and the time in a runoff that could be focused on the Democrats in November. I think the Democrats are going to have a real challenge coming up with a nominee. The polls I've seen show that Jasmine Crockett is polls best in that contested primary in the Democratic side. Obviously, she could not win in November, but I think the Democratic Party does have a problem because the progressives or the more radical element of that party is now dominant, and but I think I would be in the best position to win that race, to provide a cushion for down ballot races and help lift all those folks that are running below me on the ballot, since the Senate race will be at the very top.
What do you make of Congressman Hunt making your age an issue?
Well, I told him I work every day with a 79-year-old at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue who seems to be doing just fine too. So I think it's kind of a silly attempt to try to promote himself. He's got his own challenges. He didn't show up for about 27% of the votes that have been held in the House, even votes that were important to President Trump and his agenda. So I don't think, as I said, I don't think he can win, but he can decide whether to run or not. And But he's a young guy. I think he's got a future if he wants it, or he can end his political career by losing in this primary. But again, I don't begrudge anybody who decides they want to run. I enjoy being on the campaign trail, talking to my constituents, Texans all across this great state. It's invigorating for me, and I always learn a lot, and so I don't dread it at all.
Affordability came up as an issue during this past election,
Right.
and obviously the inflation is nowhere near the 9% that it was
Right.
during 2022, the Biden administration, but it's still around high 2s and 3%. And people are still very concerned about
Right.
this. So how do you address this? What is your solution to this?
Well, I think we need to look at everything. And you're right. One of the reasons why we've seen things become unaffordable is because 40-year high inflation during the 4 years of the Biden administration. And while it's better now, we've still seen all of those costs very high, from the groceries to rent to mortgage. And of course, the Federal Reserve has tried to come to grips with the inflation by making money tight and keeping interest rates high. My hope is that they begin to provide some relief later in the year that will help bring interest rates down and make it easier for people to afford the necessities of life and buy a car and a home and the like. But we have to figure something else out, and I don't have all the answers yet, but I certainly am asking and trying to learn what we can do to make, for example, housing more affordable, because there are a lot of folks, so-called Gen Z, who don't believe that buying a house is going to be within reach, and that's a problem, not just for them but for us. So I do think affordability is going to continue to be an issue. I think that's one of the reasons President Trump won his elections, because of high inflation and the border. And so I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot from the president and his administration and members of Congress as we try to sort that out.
Speaking of Congress, the House, right before you and I are speaking on Wednesday evening, passed the bill to reopen the government.
Finally.
Going to ask you your reaction on that, but it only funds most of the government through January. So
Yeah.
what's going to prevent that from happening again?
Well, I hope people learn from their mistakes, and the shutting down the government, I think, is one of the dumbest things that Chuck Schumer could have done. But you have to understand, this was not about a rational or logical decision. This was about saving Senator Schumer, because he's worried about maintaining his position as the Democratic leader. He got criticized for the last short-term spending bill, the continuing resolution, and he was worried that if he agreed to this one, that he'd be thrown overboard. He may still be anyway. But the fact that Democrats would hurt so many people, so many innocent people, and federal workers, people who depend on food stamps, who would hurt air traffic controllers and slow down or increase the danger of air travel, to me is just inexcusable. And the lesson of shutdowns, I think, that I've learned and others should have learned, is that they don't solve any problems. The same thing that caused you to decide to shut down the government is still there staring you in the face when it reopens. So it's better to keep the lights on and paying the bills and work through these, which is what our job is. And I trust that that's what we will do now that the government is going to be reopened.
Last question. The Democrats have continued to push for extending the enhanced tax benefits for the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Where are you on that? And is it time for Republicans to offer a solution, a different solution, a different way, if you oppose it?
Well, this, of course, is Obamacare, which we warned back 15 years ago was going to end up being unaffordable. And of course, it was sold on a pack of misrepresentations or lies, if you will. The idea that you can keep your doctor if you want your doctor, you can keep your policy, your health insurance policy. None of that proved to be true. And in fact, health insurance premiums just continued to skyrocket. Here in Texas, under the exchanges, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare exchanges, premiums are predicted to go up 18% next year. That's completely unsustainable. So I actually like the idea that President Trump has floated by saying that the money for health care should go to the consumer and not to an insurance company, because the insurance companies have gotten rich off of the Obamacare scheme, and it hadn't really solved any of the problems it was designed to solve. So, and then provide choices to people depending on their circumstances, what they want to do for their own health care. One idea would be to provide a catastrophic health insurance policy for everybody in that category, and then maybe provide funds for a health savings account that they could use to pay some of the regular expenses of health care. But obviously it's a complex issue, which is one reason why we said we're not going to try to negotiate that while the government's still shut down. Open the government, and then we'll work together to try to figure it out. And we'll come up with a number of proposals leading into the end of the year. So I think reforming this broken system is the right recipe. I don't think we're going to be able to obviously ignore it or let it lapse, because we want to make sure people have access to health care.
Senator John Cornyn, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
We appreciate it.
You bet.